Konnichiwa minasan, Gitsapalooza ni yokoso.
I'm going to start with the easy models, which are Tsuki's pack, which are just 2 wolves that are 1 cast. Obviously, there's going to be no assembly here. It's just a matter of how clean are the models, how well do they fit onto the base, that kind of thing. You can see I have my tools arrayed before me. On the side here, out of sight, I have some super glue and some accelerator. And we'll just go from there. So let's start with the easy one. And that is this particular base wolf. And you can, I don't know if it'll zoom in, but maybe you can see the kanji there. So the wolf looks to be a good cast. As I'm looking over it, I don't see obvious mold lines. Probably some on the smoother parts of the legs that I'll have to address, or at least look for. Yeah, there's one. Use this as a pointer. So I can see one obvious line along the front edge of the leg. Same here. So those are no big deal. Those are in places I would expect to see them. The other thing I'm looking for are tags and how hard they are to get rid of. This is what I mean by tag. It's just a little leftover from the casting process. And I usually, you can, on bigger ones, you can take nippers. I usually just bend them off. And there's a little bit left over on that one. And I sometimes use a scraper. This is a jewelry tool. It's just 3 relatively sharp edges on a really hard steel. So you can basically use it to scrape off lines on anything softer. Typically, though, I remove mold lines with a round needle file. I just find it's a lot more accurate, even though sometimes I remove metal around the line. But the idea when you're getting rid of mold lines isn't necessarily to erase the whole line. It's to obscure it so it's not obvious. And I just like the accuracy provided by the needle file. So anyway, by and large, the cast looks really good. I've got another tag in the back here on the tail. Sorry, I got to watch where my hands are and where the camera's focusing, which I can't really see from where I'm sitting. All right, so knock that off. Those appear to be the only 2 tags on the model. So now I'm going to take the needle file, and I'm actually going to get a second pair of glasses. You guys would laugh at me. I got glasses stacked on my face so I can see close enough. And then I just want to go in and see there's a pretty strong mold line on the back of the leg. But with a needle file, all I have to do is this, and that's gone. It's erased. I've got another mold line on the inside of the right thigh and foreleg here. And again, and this is a pretty fine needle file. You probably on the camera, you can't even see the lines on it. So that, you know, it doesn't leave big filing marks behind it when I'm done. So that's all that takes to take the 2 legs out. To be consistent, I'm going to go over every leg. So there's another modal line on the bottom of that leg. Whammo, gone. And then this leg here, I don't see a lot, but I'm just going to give it a couple of very brief little waggles with the file. I'm not pushing really hard. All right, now in different light, I can see that I still have this line on the back, on this inside of the leg here. You know, sometimes you got to turn them around. You'll hit it and you'll think, oh, I got the line, and then you see it from a different angle, and all of a sudden the line's there. And it's like, ugh. Especially once you started painting it. Now you're, you know, if you don't get the mold lines off and you started painting, and all of a sudden you find them, now you're in trouble. Now, see, that's a little persistent. There's a little bit right in here on the back of that foot. So I am just, you know, you'll see I'm not being super efficient about my filing. I mean, if I really wanted to file, I'd be, you know, just trying to stay in one place and do that. But if you do that, you end up with divots And I don't want a divot. I just want to smooth out the surface and make it look like there's no clear line there, even if I leave little pieces of line. All right, so I think the legs look good now. A little bit on the inside of that thigh too. So you got to roll them around. You know, when you're looking to get the mold lines, you got to kind of roll the piece around. You look at where the mold line is on the I don't know what this is called, but whatever this is. And I know there's a mold line there, so then I just follow it right up onto the model. And there's a little bit on the back of the foot. Nobody's ever going to see it, especially the way I base things. But then that tells me, all right, I got to follow that line around. How's the tail look on that line? Tail looks okay. Top of the tail looks okay. Body, because of all the fur and everything, looks fine. Face is another place because things smooth out on the head. And there's a line right there. I don't know if this focuses, but right above where I have that thing right there. So again, I don't want to destroy the face, but I do want to get in and break that line up. So I take my file and very gently get in there and just kind of, you know, the tip of this file is actually broken, and sometimes I just use it to kind of gouge the line away. And on a model like this, it's going to end up looking like hair. Now I've got some right here. I got a little bit of line on the brow line, and I have to be really careful because I don't want to destroy that eye. So you just fiddle. Now I could, on a bigger open space, I could use that sharp tool, that triangular tool that I showed you earlier. And if there was a line, well, let's see, there's a line on the belly right here. I could take the sharp tool and just put it on the line and drag it. And in certain circumstances, that works really well. It just kind of pulls the line away. I have another tool which I can't get to because the tripod's in the way. Like this, except it's super smooth and shiny and it's kind of curved at the tip. It's called a burnisher. And you can take that, imagine this was round and smooth and shiny. And you can take that and you can rub it back and forth where the line is, and you basically just flatten the line down and moosh it into the rest of the metal. Yeah, you're not actually physically joining them, you're just pushing it down to the point where it just blends in, especially after paint. So that's another way to get rid of lines, but I just like these little needle files. It's so easy and does very little. It'll skim a little bit off the rest of the model, but not much. So yeah, there we go. Touching up the leg. See, I can, depending on how I hold this, I thought I had the belly done, but then I look at it, I was like, oh wait, there's a mold line on the belly. So now, of course, I'm talking and showing, and so this is stretching out a lot longer than it would actually take. If I was just hunkering down and doing it, it would make for a much more boring video because I wouldn't be talking. Or maybe that would make for a much better video because I wouldn't be talking, I don't know. But it would take a lot less time. Okay, so I think I've got the lines off that one. That looks pretty good. Since I will give them a final check. Oh, look at that. Right on the front paw. You see that? So the trick is to put just enough pressure on your file that you're getting rid of the line, and you'll remove a little bit of the material around the line, but you don't want to change the sculpt. You know, so you always walk this fine line, and I'll admit I'm pretty cavalier when it comes to the sculptor's time. You know, if I need to attack a model or I want to modify it, I don't lose any sleep over it. I mean, it's the sculptor that's done something I can never do, which is turn out this beautiful model. But if I think I have a clever way of amending it to make it look a little bit like my own as opposed to just everybody else's, I don't mind doing that, and I suspect a lot of sculptors wouldn't mind my doing that. I'm not showing them, I'm not intending any disrespect. I'm just like taking something that I love and it's really cool, and I'm trying to make it my own. So, all right, so I'm going to put it on the base. Now, who knows whether I'm going to keep these bases or not. I am big into basing. I will do all kinds of crazy things to bases. Sometimes I buy pre-made bases. That I don't usually, because it really commits you to that company. And if something happens and they stop making those bases and the company goes out of business, then you're kind of hosed. But I have plenty of armies on pre-made bases, including my Bakemono and soon to be my pirates. So anyway, so what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to glue this onto here. I will flatten off the bottom. Let's see. Oh, I can't get to my big file. So I keep one big file in my jewelry drawers. Oh, there we go. Sorry, you guys still on? There we go. We're still good. All right, so big flat file like you'd find in your garage. And just because it's a good way to hog stuff off. And I just want to make sure, I don't care if it's smooth, perfectly smooth on the bottom. I want to make sure there are no ragged bumps or anything, so that when I stick it on the base, I don't want anything to stick out the bottom of the slot. I want that to be nice and flush, which it is. And then the other thing I do here is just when you're thinking about placing the base, the model on the base, think about what you want to do with the presentation. I mean, in this case, I would call this the front of the wolf because the head is slightly turned that way. I mean, really, it's facing kind of an angle that way, but this is like the primary, what do you call it, the side view. So when you look at the base, the models are a little skewed off one way or another. So I will put the primary view on towards the open side of the base, so I can do interesting things with this larger part of the base, and that augments the model. So anyway, there we are. So I'm not gonna, you guys can figure out on your own how to glue models onto bases. You need that information from me like you need another hole in the head. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of this. My favorite glue, Superjet. I don't know, there's only one store in the whole Madison area that I can find it. It's medium viscosity. It is the best super glue type glue I have ever used. Fantastic. The viscosity is just perfect. All right, and I will kind of look at it, make sure it's lined up the way I want it. You can hold this until the super glue dries. If you're impatient, you can use a little bit of zip kicker, which is an accelerant. I probably shouldn't be spraying it on my hands, but with COVID-19, it's probably all for the good. And there we go. Remember, there's some glue down on the bottom that may still be wet, so you either spray it on the bottom too, or you just be careful about it. All right, so that little doggy is done. So we're gonna put it there. All right, let's take a look at the second one. There's a reason I did this one second. It's an interesting case. So you can see this one has got the tabs to go in the slot, and except it's not solid. There's a little tab here and a little tab there. I don't think that's a miscast. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. However, if you try to put those little tabs in the slot, they don't fit. They're too far apart. So there's a couple options. One is that somehow the legs got a little cattywampus when either during the casting or after the casting. And so if you look, these aren't really parallel. They should be parallel, but they're not. So one option is they got a little cattywampus. Number two, another option is, they got a little cattywampus, so you can just squeeze them together until they're parallel, and at that point I bet you they fit in the slot. Another option is that you don't really need them, or at least you don't need both of them in order to secure your model to the base. So if you don't want to mess with it, you can just cut one of these off with one of these guys and flush cutters, and then put whichever one you leave on in the base. I'm going to try to fit them in the base by manipulating where these two sections are. But first I'm going to look for tags, and I'm going to do mold lines. So I have a very regular system when I approach these models so that I don't forget anything at any given time. So taking a look for tags, I don't see any other than the dog tag, and that one stays. So let's take a look for mold lines instead. So identify the mold lines on here. This is your first clue, and then move up onto the model. There may be... Okay, I can definitely see a mold line along the back of the leg coming through here. There may be a little bit of one on this part of the leg up here. Let's take those same lines to the back. So I don't know if you can see it, but there is a tiny little line and a bump on the bottom of that foot. And the rest of this is pretty rough, which will help conceal any mold lines that exist. So you notice I'm spinning them all over the place. So take a look at these strings from every angle. Okay, there's a little bit of a mold line, and it is really blended in. There's some long lines for hair on this back leg, but there is a little bit of a mold line that runs straight up and down here, but not much. Let me see, there may be one in here. So here's our line on this block. So if we follow that around, yeah, that could be one right here, or that could just be one of the molded lines for the hair. And frankly, if it's that close, does it really matter? Is anybody going to see it? And then we take a look in the back where things get a little smoother. I don't see much. So other than the forelegs, looks like there's a little bit on the forelegs. The back legs look pretty good. Whatever mold lines there are being well hidden by the fur. So give me just a second. You guys can hang out and watch or work on whatever you're working on. And I'm just going to attack this with the... That's assuming I can find the lines again. I think I just lost them. Okay. So there we go. So yeah, it's not so much filing, I'm just rubbing it all over the place. And it will leave little file marks behind, but nobody's going to see them. Once I get primer and paint on these models, I'm thinking of probably airbrushing them. I haven't had my airbrush out in a while, because I don't think a lot of... well, I suppose it would work on most Bushido models. I just decided I wanted to try to tackle Bushido with my brush, but... I'm struggling with my eyesight lately, and so it may be better off for things like this if I just give up. Take the airbrush out, and if you haven't used an airbrush, they're really great, but they are not an answer to all problems. Super details, airbrushes can't do. I remember seeing a post by somebody who'd gotten an airbrush and was trying to do super detailed faces with it, and somebody else got on it and said, man, you're using it for the wrong thing. But if you're looking for blending, like on all the cloaks and things that these guys have, or like with the wolves, I've actually painted 40K wolves before, and and the way I did it was to get on YouTube, and I found a Russian guy who was doing professional painting and did a tutorial online about how to paint wolves. And he used an airbrush, and they turned out fantastically well. The belly on this one looks pretty good. I don't see... Maybe a little bit back here. So yeah, you're trying not to obliterate the detail that the modeler put in, but those long straight lines through the model will just kill it. That'll be what people see. They won't see the beauty that's designed into the model. They won't see the beauty you have in your paint job. All they're going to see is that mold line going through. All right, that looks good. So now we've gotten the tags off, we've straightened it out. So now what I want to do is try to make it fit on the base using both tags, or both of the base projections, whatever you want to call them. So generally, the obvious thing is they're not parallel. And because they're not parallel, they've extended the arc in either way, which is what makes them A, too long for the slot, and B, even if I could get them into the slot, there'd be points sticking down. So you can manipulate it in a couple of ways. I'm going to once again reach across the camera and steal a tool that I don't have, and we're going to fiddle. So what I have is, these are all jewelry tools. They're all inexpensive. They're just little hand tools. Get that out of the way for now. So you'll notice the jaws of this pliers are rounded, so you can get them into a small area and bend things without doing a lot of damage. And then the other big pliers are the parallel jaw pliers. Again, these are I think 15 bucks a piece, something like that. These are jeweler's tools, so they're really well made. And you can, if you need to, as opposed to a normal pliers, these jaws, they're called parallel jaw pliers because the jaws come in like this. And it really makes them handy. So I think what I'm going to start by doing, the easiest solution, is just to grab onto these tags and see if I can't bend them in a little bit so that they're parallel. And then we'll see that is likely to cause the least damage. Obviously, if you bend metal back and forth, you'll weaken it and eventually snap it off. But since this is one action, one bend, and the first bend, I think that the odds of my doing any real damage to the model are small. So there we go. I bent that one in. I bent that one in. So now they're more or less parallel. And then here's another good thing parallel jaw pliers are for. You see these aren't quite lined up. So I'm going to put them both in the jaws and just squeeze it. And that is going to line them up perfectly. So now let's see what they look like. See if they'll slide in or if I'm still have more. Man, almost. See, that back one is just a tiny bit splayed out. And I think I can move that again without worrying about it. Right tools for the right job. You guys ever hear anybody tell you that? Your old man, maybe? There we go. All right. So I don't like the way this one is sticking up. So I'm not sure what I can do about that, but I'm going to try by just taking this and holding this down, and unfortunately the lip of this thing is hanging over the edge of my table, so I'm going to move it back, and I'm just going to push down. Oh, no, I broke it off. But the foot is intact, so I don't care. So there you go. Accidents happen. So I still have the back foot and the tag that goes with the back foot nicely together. Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to slide that in here. Just too much monkeying around. And then there we go. Here we go. So that'll look like that, and that'll be fine. At this point, I'm only going to glue the back tag because my basing will take care of all the other feet eventually. So right now, and this one I'm going to do from the bottom. So I'm just going to drop a little glue in there, let it settle and move around. And then because we're trying to make time, put a little bit of that on there. There we go. There. Works perfectly.